Have you ever sat in silence, staring at a message that never came, a name that no longer lights up your phone, a memory that refuses to fade? Not because you're weak, but because somewhere deep down, you gave something real, something honest, something whole, and it wasn't returned. Rejection is one of life's cruelest mirrors. It shows you not only the distance between two hearts, but the echoes of your own longing, what you hoped for, what you believed in, and what you thought you could build with another soul. But here's the truth few dare to speak aloud. What breaks your heart also reveals your soul. And if you listen closely enough, heartbreak doesn't just wound, it wakes. It invites you to stop chasing illusions and start meeting your own depth, to stop rehearsing loss and start rehearsing strength. And no philosophy has ever guided us through this internal wilderness more clearly or more compassionately than Stoicism. This isn't about becoming cold or emotionless. It's not about moving on with false bravado or suppressing your hurt like it never mattered. The Stoics didn't teach detachment out of apathy. They taught emotional mastery born from clarity. They showed us how to suffer well, how to stay grounded when everything we hoped for slips through our fingers, how to stand, not bitterly, but beautifully, in the ashes of something we loved. So in today's video, we're not just talking about getting over someone. We're going to uncover 6 Stoic rules that help you transmute the ache of rejection into something far greater: quiet power, profound peace, and unshakable inner dignity. These are not theoretical ideas. They're practical tools forged in the fires of real loss and sharpened by timeless wisdom. If you've ever whispered to yourself in the dark, "Why wasn't I enough?" This is for you. If you felt the sting of silence where there once was affection, this is your invitation to remember: you are not the absence left behind. You are the strength rising in its place. And if that message stirs something in you, if you feel the call to rise with more clarity, more emotional strength, and more peace than you've ever known, then join me. Subscribe to Stoic now. Like this video if it resonates. And share your story in the comments. We grow not by hiding our wounds, but by honoring the lessons they carry. Now take a breath, because what you're about to hear isn't a formula. It's a roadmap home to yourself. Let's begin. Number 1, accept reality, not your fantasy. You didn't fall in love with them. You fell in love with who you believed they were. And that distinction is where most heartbreak begins. Romantic rejection hurts so deeply not just because someone left, but because the vision you carried in your mind stayed. You're not just grieving a person, you're grieving a future that now dissolves like mist in morning sun. The inside jokes that will never happen again. The imagined trips, the shared seasons, the quiet evenings you thought were ahead. And when that illusion is shattered, it doesn't just feel like loss. It feels like identity theft. But here is where the Stoic path gently places a hand on your shoulder, not to silence your sorrow, but to redirect it. You have power over your mind. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is not a command to stop feeling. It's an invitation to stop fantasizing. There's a difference. Pain has a rhythm, a heartbeat of its own. But suffering, especially prolonged suffering, is often kept alive by false memory. We water a garden that never truly bloomed. We replay smiles that were never backed by substance. We cling to moments that might have felt real but were not rooted in shared truth. It's time to ask yourself, quietly, honestly, did you love them? Or did you love the idea of them? Maybe they were beautiful in your eyes because your soul wanted them to be. Maybe they fit a missing puzzle piece you've been carrying since childhood, the ache to be seen, to be wanted, to be chosen. Maybe they mirrored back a version of you that felt more alive, more significant, more whole. But that's not love. That's projection. And projection, when unexamined, becomes poison disguised as purpose. To accept reality is to grieve with clarity. It means you no longer rehearse their potential, you observe their actual behavior. The broken promises, the growing distance, the lack of reciprocity. Not to demonize them, but to anchor yourself back into truth. It means acknowledging, perhaps for the first time, that you were more loyal to the relationship than they were present in it. That while you waited and hoped, they had already left emotionally, even if their body stayed a while longer. Amor fati, the love of fate, is not just a Stoic slogan. It is the spiritual art of embracing what happened, not because it pleased you, but because it shaped you. It reminds us that fate is not always kind, but it is always honest. And to love what is real, even when it hurts, is the highest form of courage. I once knew a man, let's call him Daniel. He fell for a woman who lit up his world. Every detail about her seemed aligned with his soul, her wit, her eyes, her spirit. But over time, cracks formed. She became distant. Conversations turned shallow. Moments he cherished felt routine to her. Still, Daniel clung to the version of her he first met. He wrote poems to the past, not letters to the present. And when she finally walked away, he broke. But months later, something shifted. Through journaling and quiet reflection, he saw her not as villain or angel, but as human. He reread old texts, not to romanticize, but to observe. He noticed her disinterest early on, the subtle emotional absences, the way she never truly asked about his dreams, his wounds, his history. And something inside him sighed, not with resentment, but with release. He hadn't lost his soulmate. He had been freed from a story he outgrew. You see, love is only sacred when it is shared in truth. Anything else is performance. And what Stoicism teaches us, what it dares us to practice, is the humility to admit we may have fallen for the script, not the actor. This is why the first rule is not about moving on, but waking up. You don't move on from illusions. You let them dissolve. So how do you do that? Start with brutal honesty. Write down everything they actually did, not just what you felt. Document the silences, the inconsistencies, the moments you brushed off because you feared confrontation. Then beside each one, write what you told yourself it meant. You'll begin to see the gap, the canyon, between who they were and who you needed them to be. That gap is where your pain lives. Close it, and the healing begins. Forgive yourself for loving a dream. There is no shame in hope. The human heart was made to reach. But let your next reaching be grounded in the real. Let the next time you offer your soul to another, you do it with eyes wide open and feet planted on the earth. The Stoic doesn't avoid emotion. He refines it. He lets the wave crash, but he builds his house above the floodline. So today, ask yourself this. What am I holding on to that never really held me? If you can answer that, if you can sit in that truth without running, you're already healing. Not because time passed, but because you returned to yourself. Because you chose truth over fantasy, dignity over delusion. And that is the beginning of power. Number 2, rejection is redirection. There's a particular silence that follows romantic rejection, a silence that isn't just quiet, but questioning. A silence that feels like a cliff edge, echoing back every what if, every why not, and every was I not enough. And in that space, it's easy to confuse pain with punishment, to believe that the end of love means the end of worth. But what if that silence isn't an ending? What if it's a redirection? The Stoics taught us that life never simply removes, it reroutes. What stands in the way becomes the way, wrote Marcus Aurelius. He didn't mean this as mere optimism. He meant that the universe, in its quiet architecture, often uses loss to liberate us. What feels like rejection is sometimes the hand of life lifting us out of what we were never meant to stay in. Romantic rejection, then, is not a verdict on your value. It is a vote of confidence from fate that something greater is ahead. Yet most of us don't see it that way, not at first. Because biologically, rejection doesn't feel neutral. It feels like withdrawal. Studies show that being romantically rejected activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Our dopamine drops. Cortisol surges. The body trembles. The mind loops. And before we even understand what happened, we're standing in a battlefield of memory, fighting ghosts that never answer back. But here's what the Stoics knew. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. When someone exits your life, it doesn't mean you've been abandoned by love. It means you've been offered the sacred chance to become more than who you were when you first met them. I remember a story a friend once told me. Let's call him Adam. He met a woman during what he described as the season of salvation. He had just pulled himself out of a depression. She was radiant, sharp, spiritual. They connected fast, fell harder. It was intense, beautiful, and, like many fires, brief. She ended it one evening with a soft voice and vague words. I need something else. I don't know what I want. Adam crumbled. He believed she was the reward for his healing, that she was the reason he fought so hard to come back to life. But that night, something shifted. After the numbness passed, and the anger softened into ache, Adam began asking himself a Stoic question: what is this teaching me? He realized that he had been healing for her, not for himself. That the version of him she loved was still incomplete, still fragile, still waiting for external validation. Her leaving forced him to complete the very work he began before she arrived. It wasn't rejection. It was redirection toward wholeness. This is the wisdom you must carry in your own heartbreak. You were not denied love. You were denied the illusion that love must come from outside you. Every closed door is a corridor to a new self. The Stoics didn't believe in wasted pain. They saw all discomfort as divine curriculum. Each ache, each ending, each disappointment as an assignment designed to test not just your endurance, but your perspective. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Romantic rejection isn't a failure in connection. It's a forging of character. It shows you where you're still attached, still dependent, still defining yourself by the presence or absence of another. So what now? You don't rush to move on. You don't bury the emotion. Instead, you allow the ending to become a mirror. Ask, what did this rejection awaken in me? What hidden beliefs surfaced? What areas of my soul are still seeking permission to feel worthy? This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is sacred integration. Rejection reveals our illusions, that we must be chosen to feel valuable, that love must be reciprocated to be real, that endings mean we were somehow unlovable. No, love was real, even if it didn't last. You were real. The effort was real. But reality, truth, has a different plan now. And your role is not to resist, but to rise. Let life reorient you. If the person you wanted isn't the person who chose you, trust that your path is meant for someone deeper, someone more aligned. Or maybe, just maybe, it's meant for no one at all right now. Because solitude, too, is a form of love. The kind that recalibrates your energy, sharpens your purpose, and prepares your spirit for something more authentic. The Stoic doesn't curse the storm. He studies its pattern, learns its rhythm, and then walks with stronger steps through the rain. So today, if you're sitting in the stillness after goodbye, remember, you are not where you were left. You are where you are being led. This heartbreak is not an end, it's an initiation. Let it guide you towards something you would have never found otherwise, your own untouchable clarity. Because in the space where love used to live, something else is now blooming. Wisdom. Number 3, detach with dignity, not bitterness. There's a dangerous moment in every heartbreak, the split second when dignity hangs in the balance. When ego and emotion burn like fire beneath your skin. When you want to send the last message. Speak the final truth. Deliver the sentence that makes them regret leaving. It's human. It's tempting. And it's the very trap the Stoics warn us about. Because the moment you react to disrespect with more chaos, you trade your peace for their validation. But Stoicism offers a different path. A quieter one. A more powerful one. It is the path of dignified detachment. To detach with dignity means this. You do not chase closure from someone who could not give you consistency. You do not beg for answers from someone who left you with questions. You do not hurl words into the void, hoping they'll echo back an apology. You simply walk. Steady, certain, whole. Epictetus said it best. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. The rejection didn't destroy you. It was your interpretation of that rejection, your decision to personalize what may have had nothing to do with your worth, that ignited the suffering. You see, bitterness is the child of attachment. And attachment, when left unchecked, becomes obsession dressed as loyalty. This is the time to shift, not to pretend it didn't hurt, but to reclaim the part of you that forgot how strong you are without them. Imagine this. You see them again. Maybe across the room. Maybe through a screen. They're laughing. With someone else. The gut twists. The heart tightens. The breath shortens. And for a fleeting second, you want to rage, or run, or cry. But the Stoic doesn't flinch. He acknowledges the emotion, but he doesn't obey it. He breathes into the discomfort. He watches it rise, like a storm cloud over the sea, and then he lets it pass. Because composure is not the absence of feeling. It's the refusal to be ruled by impulse. To detach with dignity means you don't unfriend, block, stalk, or retaliate. You don't use silence as a weapon, nor attention as bait. You detach not to manipulate, but to return to your rightful center. I once knew a woman named Ray. Her partner ghosted her after a 2-year relationship. No reason, no warning, just silence. At first, she broke. She wrote messages she never sent, cried herself hollow. But then, she remembered something her therapist once said: closure is an inside job. So Ray did something radical. She stopped trying to understand him and started trying to understand herself. She deleted the threads. She left the relationship space untouched. She didn't speak badly of him to friends, not because he deserved protection, but because she did. She refused to carry his actions as her burden. 3 months later, he came back, as they often do. But Ray didn't respond with fury or forgiveness. She responded with stillness. No bitterness, no theater, just calm. Her silence wasn't revenge. It was a boundary born from healing. That is detachment with dignity. You see, when you react with vengeance, you stay entangled in their chaos. But when you rise in calm, you leave them to dance with their own echo. And if you need to express your truth, do it privately. Write it, burn it, journal every thought until the venom drains and only clarity remains. The Stoics practiced this regularly: daily reflection, evening reviews, silent conversations with the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And in love, the best revenge is not to become hardened, jaded, or cruel, but to remain soft, whole, and unavailable to drama. Let them wonder how you healed so gracefully. Let them see a version of you that no longer needs their validation to feel valuable. That's Stoic power, not coldness, but control. So how do you begin? Start by pulling your energy back. All of it. The thoughts, the questions, the replays. Each one is a thread, and with every breath, you untangle them, gently, without judgment. Then, define your rituals of release. Maybe it's a letter you'll never send. Maybe it's a walk without your phone. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's prayer. But let each act remind you, you're no longer circling someone who's already moved on. And finally, refuse to respond to provocation. If they reach out to test you, to breadcrumb you, to keep a foot in your life without commitment, don't bite. Stillness will say more than any carefully crafted comeback ever could. Because detachment is not the end of love. It's the beginning of peace. And peace, my friend, is the highest form of power. When you choose dignity over drama, silence over spite, and distance over distortion, you're not just healing. You're evolving. You're showing the universe, and yourself, that you are no longer available for anything less than truth. So next time your ego whispers, say something, show them, prove your worth. Let your soul answer instead. I already have, by walking away with grace. Number 4, transmute pain into power. There is a sacred truth the world rarely tells you. The pain you carry is not your enemy. It's your forge. And while most will try to escape it, through distraction, rebound, revenge, the Stoic sees it for what it truly is: a crucible, a place of purification, a sacred fire where the false self burns and the true self begins to emerge. When your heart shatters, when love ends without your permission, it feels as though you're standing in ruins. The laughter, the plans, the shared dreams, gone. And in the quiet aftermath, all you have left is the echo of what once was. But here's the revelation. What you do with that echo is everything. Pain is not something to be numbed. It is energy, raw, untamed, intense. And energy, like fire, is not evil. It only becomes destructive when misused. When channeled, it becomes fuel, power, light, heat, motion. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with grief and responsibility, once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is not metaphor. This is blueprint. Your pain is not a wall. It's a doorframe, and you get to choose whether you walk through it or stay behind with your ghosts. I knew a man named Jonah, soft-spoken, loyal. He was left without warning by the woman he thought he'd marry. She said he was too much, too intense, too deep, too invested. Her departure cracked him open. For weeks, he couldn't eat, couldn't speak. His friends didn't recognize him. But Jonah didn't run from the ache. He sat with it. He walked with it. He wrote about it until the pen nearly broke. And then something shifted. He began going to the gym, not to impress her, but to feel his body again. He signed up for therapy, not to fix himself, but to hear the parts of him he had silenced. He took solo hikes, read books on philosophy, meditated at sunrise. He said to me once, "I realized the love I gave her wasn't meant to be wasted. It was meant to be redirected." Jonah didn't get her back, but he got himself back. And then some. That is transmutation. It's not about bouncing back. That's shallow. This is deeper. This is about rising forward. You don't get stronger by forgetting the pain. You get stronger by meeting it with new eyes. You don't drown in emotion. You dive into it like cold water, come back up gasping, and suddenly, you're alive again. You begin to ask different questions. Not "why did this happen to me?" but "who am I becoming because of this?" You start to see your wounds not as proof of failure, but as evidence of expansion. The heartbreak, the rejection, the emptiness, it stretches you. It makes room for more wisdom, for more awareness, for a love that matches your depth, not just your desire. But this doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. Transmutation is a process, one that demands effort, repetition, stillness, and yes, pain. But let me ask you, what if pain was never punishment? What if it was permission? Permission to grow, to evolve, to shed the versions of you that settled for less. The Stoics believed in using adversity as alignment. Epictetus, who lived most of his life as a slave, said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are. Not who you thought you were, who you are." So, how do you begin this process? Start with the body. Move. Break a sweat. Lift weights. Run. Walk long enough for your thoughts to catch up. You are not just a mind grieving. You are a whole being, and your body needs to discharge what your heart cannot explain. Then move inward. Reflect. Write. Ask yourself what this pain has exposed. What illusions it shattered. What patterns it revealed. Make solitude a sanctuary, not a punishment. Be alone, not to sulk, but to center. Build rituals. Tea at dusk. A journal before bed. A playlist that reminds you who you are when no one else is looking. Finally, reconnect with purpose. Pain without purpose becomes poison, but pain tied to growth, that becomes sacred. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the season where you stop asking, "Will they come back?" and start declaring, "I'm not the same man they left." Let your power return, not in arrogance, but in alignment. Because here's the truth no one told you. Heartbreak didn't break you. It broke the shell around you. And what's emerging now is something rare, something quiet, something that no rejection can touch. Clarity. That is the Stoic way. To not just endure the fire, but to become it. Number 5, don't chase, attract through wholeness. The moment you start chasing, you start leaking power. And yet, that's what we're conditioned to do, isn't it? When someone pulls away, we reach harder. When someone goes silent, we talk louder. When someone stops showing up, we begin proving our worth with desperate devotion. Not out of love, but out of fear. Out of the hollow belief that if we run fast enough, if we try hard enough, they'll turn around. But the Stoic pauses. He doesn't run. He returns to his center. Because chasing is rooted in the illusion that love is something we must earn, rather than something that's drawn naturally to wholeness. And wholeness, by its nature, does not chase. It attracts. This is not passive. It's powerful. Think of the moon. It doesn't scream to be noticed. It simply exists, radiant and grounded, and the tides of the earth respond. In the same way, when you become aligned, clear, purposeful, inwardly steady, you begin to emit something that speaks louder than words: presence. The Stoics believe that inner equilibrium is the highest form of attractiveness, not in the romantic sense alone, but in the human sense. People are drawn to those who do not need them, those who do not beg, impress, or perform. They're drawn to the calm in a world that is always shouting. But the broken heart doesn't see that at first. The broken heart says, maybe if I reach out one more time, maybe if I show them I care, maybe if I remind them of all we shared. And beneath all of that, a simple cry: please, don't forget me. But here's the paradox. The more you ask to be remembered, the more forgettable you become. Why? Because desperation creates repulsion. When your identity becomes entangled in someone else's validation, you emit what biologists call stress signals: cortisol, adrenaline, insecurity. Not just emotionally, but energetically. And whether people realize it consciously or not, they pull away. Not because you're unworthy, but because your energy no longer feels safe. It feels needy, clingy, unstable. Compare that to someone grounded. Someone who, even in grief, carries themselves with quiet confidence. Who doesn't reach, doesn't beg, doesn't dramatize. Just exists. Fully. Authentically. That's the energy that pulls others in. Not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't need it. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And I would offer this. He who is whole is magnetic. There is a deep and rare gravity in a person who is content in their own soul, not because they've never known love, but because they've learned to be love. So how do you reach that place? You stop asking what they're doing and start asking what you're becoming. You stop checking their page and start checking in with your purpose. You don't dim yourself in the hopes they'll return. You shine brighter, not as a performance, but as a practice. Begin where all wholeness begins, solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. Loneliness is the ache of needing someone beside you. Solitude is the strength of being with yourself and not flinching. Make peace with your own presence. Take yourself to places you once shared. Eat alone with grace. Reclaim rituals that remind you of who you were before you began orbiting someone else's gravity. Write yourself back into your life. Not for show, for stillness. Then, take inventory of your energy. Who gets it? Where does it go? Are you leaking it through overthinking, through digital breadcrumbs, through imaginary conversations where you win them back? Cut the cord. You don't need them to return. You need you to return. And here's what happens next. Something you may not believe until it's real. One day, without fanfare, without forcing, without trying to win the breakup, people begin to notice. Your ex might feel it. Friends might comment. Even strangers may pause. Because energy doesn't lie. And when you radiate self-respect, when your days become full of purpose again, when your silence is not empty but electric, they feel it. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. And that is irresistible. Not because it's a strategy, but because it's true. You stop moving like someone who's been abandoned. You move like someone who's coming home to themselves. And in that stillness, in that magnetic gravity of a man or woman no longer performing, you become deeply, beautifully unforgettable. Because you stopped chasing love, and you started becoming it. That is the Stoic way. Number 6. Remember who you are, not who you lost. There's a moment after the heartbreak, after the silence, after the last message fades into memory, when the world feels unbearably still. You've cried. You've asked why. You've begged the universe for answers. And now, there's just space. Empty, quiet, unfamiliar. That space isn't your enemy. It's your altar. Because this is where the real healing begins. Not by rewriting the past, but by reclaiming yourself. The final rule is not about forgetting them. It's about remembering you. Who were you before they entered your life? What dreams pulsed in your chest before you entwined your soul with theirs? What parts of you did you quiet just to keep the peace? What parts did you dim to be easier to love? This isn't self-help fluff. This is sacred excavation. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," he wasn't speaking poetically. He was issuing a warning. If your every thought is soaked in loss, then your soul will begin to reflect only absence. But when your thoughts return to virtue, purpose, presence, then your soul begins to reflect you. Not the version who was left, not the one who begged or broke, but the one who remained. You. To remember who you are is to reassemble the pieces that never actually left you. They were just buried beneath the weight of love unreturned. I once knew a woman named Elise. Her partner left abruptly after years together. No affair, no dramatic fallout, just the quiet death of interest. Elise was gutted. She said to me once, "I don't know who I am without him." And I said, "That's the most honest place to begin." So she started rebuilding, not from scratch, but from truth. She didn't reinvent herself. She rediscovered herself. She found old journals filled with her childhood poems, started painting again, took a solo trip to the mountains where they had once vacationed together, not to relive the memories, but to reclaim the space. She went to therapy, not to talk about him, but to talk to herself, to meet the woman who had been waiting beneath the rubble. Months later, she stood in front of her mirror and whispered, not with anger, but with quiet awe, "I forgot how good it feels to belong to myself." That's the kind of remembering we're talking about. Because breakups don't just end relationships, They disrupt identity. They untangle routines, shift your sense of future, steal your reflection. But the Stoic doesn't mourn what is taken. He reclaims what was misplaced. Epictetus once said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." So adorn yourself, not with revenge, but with reverence, not with distraction, but with devotion. Begin a morning ritual that anchors you back to your center. A few minutes of silence. A journal entry titled, "Today, I remember." Remind yourself of your worth, not in comparison to anyone else, but as a sacred, untouchable truth. Write affirmations not for vanity, but for grounding. I am not the one who was abandoned. I am the one who stayed. I am not a leftover. I am a lighthouse. I am not waiting to be chosen. I already have been by me. These are not slogans. They're recalibrations. Each word, a thread pulling you back to your core. This is where philosophy becomes personal. The Stoics weren't writing theories. They were writing lifelines. Marcus Aurelius journaling his meditations. Seneca counseling others through grief. Epictetus teaching former slaves and broken men how to reclaim inner sovereignty. You are not the first to be heartbroken. You will not be the last. But you can be among the rare few who rise not hardened, but reborn. So ask yourself, what virtues do I wish to embody now that this chapter is closed? Is it courage? Then act with courage. Do something uncomfortable alone. Is it wisdom? Then seek it. Read, write, learn. Is it grace? Then forgive, not for them, but to free your own breath. The person you lost is not your North Star. They are a closed chapter, a completed sentence, a soul who walked with you for a season. And that season taught you something you could have never learned in comfort. It taught you the ache of absence. But more importantly, it gave you the mirror of memory. And in that mirror, you now see not their face, but your own. Weathered, softer, stronger. You're still here. And you're no longer looking for someone to save you. Because you have become your own rescue. The echo that remains. So here we are, at the quiet end of something powerful. You began this journey with pain in your chest, maybe still in your throat. You came seeking answers, strategies, maybe even some hope. And what you found, I hope, was something even more valuable than comfort. You found yourself, again, not the broken version, not the abandoned one, but the version who can stand in silence and still hear the echo of their own strength. The version who no longer chases closure from others, but creates clarity within. The version who looks at loss and no longer asks, "Why me?" but whispers, "Thank you for revealing what I needed to see." That is the Stoic way, not to avoid love, but to love wisely. Not to deny heartbreak, but to meet it with eyes open and soul steady. To feel the wound and still rise. Not in defiance, but in dignity. Because rejection does not define you. Response does. You've learned to accept what is, not what you wished it would be. You've learned that rejection isn't a judgment. It's redirection toward deeper truth. You've learned to detach with grace, not grudge. To burn not with rage, but with resilience. To stop chasing shadows and begin attracting with substance. And most of all, you've remembered. You remembered who you are. The quiet power you always had. The inner compass you always ignored for the sake of someone else's warmth. The voice that was silenced in your pursuit of being loved. That voice is back now, and it's yours to trust, to honor, to follow. So where do you go from here? You go inward. You go forward. You go deeper, not into the past, but into presence. You begin choosing relationships not out of loneliness, but alignment. Not out of desperation, but devotion to truth. And if you stumble, as we all do, return here. This video isn't just a guide. It's a mirror. A reminder that everything you seek from others, belonging, understanding, validation, was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. If this message found you at the right time, I invite you, gently, sincerely, to let it echo in someone else's life too. Share it, like it, subscribe to this channel, Stoic Now, not for content, but for communion, for a space where silence is sacred and growth is grounded. And if you feel ready, leave a comment, not just for me, for those who are still in the darkness you just walked through. Say something that might be a torch in someone else's night, because healing is never meant to be hoarded. And before we part, let me offer you one last thought, one final ripple from the Stoic Ocean. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, may your thoughts be clear. May your heart be light. May your path be yours again. Until next time, walk gently and walk powerfully. You are already enough.